Hey everyone, I'm Chris Hansen with Crime Watch Daily. I'm joined by our intrepid team of reporters, Jason Matera, Michelle Segona, and Anna Garcia. You may not recognize this particular set. We are actually going to do our show today from Foley Square in the historic area of the New York Supreme Court. And we're going to do a special show getting some of the best of Crime Watch Daily moments to you, but the rain, as you can tell, is not cooperating. We have tents, we have wires in the water. We're probably going to have to call today and shoot it tomorrow. But we wanted to take this opportunity to chat with you and go over some of the things that we think are important, some of the things that we're working on, and some of the things that we've done that we hope you've enjoyed. Jason, we talk about confrontational interviews. Here in it's like a family road trip.
Well, we should tell everyone we're inside a van, right? Exactly. We're in a van.
If I have to turn this car around, the next one who talks is going to get it. Tell us, what's your favorite confrontational interview of the year, of the season so far? I know it's a 100-way tie.
You invade people's spaces all the time.
I do. Am I invading your space right now?
No,
I'm feeling
invading.
You're a good space invader.
I'm a good space invader.
I've got one.
Although I wouldn't want
Okay.
Jason Matera knocking on my door.
No, I would not want any of you knocking on
No,
my door.
I agree.
But this just happened to me, and this is the craziest thing ever. So the story hasn't aired yet. So we're waiting for someone. We're looking for someone. We've had a private eye scouting out for days, 3 days. Cannot find this person. I swear to you, I walk out of the coffee shop with our photographer without a camera, right? Because we're scouting out a location. And the man walks right in front of me. What are?
Did you stop him?
No, are you
Did you
kidding?
get yourself?
Sometimes I'd rather be luckier than good. Also, let me just break in here real quick because we want to hear from you. So as we talk about what we're up to, send us your questions, and Natasha and Stephanie here will fill them to us, and we can answer the questions. But Michelle, you were just saying.
Jason. Actually,
Well,
I'm gonna
back to me. Back to me. Putting this.
Hey, I bought you time, man.
I'm just saying we do so.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Chased by
have
a
the same.
tractor.
Yes.
Well, okay, that was
that was kind
definitely
of a
unique.
moment.
That was
Right,
unique.
yeah.
That was unique.
Sorry guys, I have to turn it.
What?
Natasha's turning it.
Wait a minute, we lost Chris.
We lost Chris. We gotta get Chris.
Chris, you got it.
Okay, how do we
Scoot
do
in.
this? Okay, Jason, now we can't see you.
Jason?
Oh my God,
must be missing.
really? We need a bigger van, people.
Yeah, we got it.
This is
All
pretty
right, tighten
big
up.
too.
Yeah.
This is pretty big van.
All right, so we're going.
Now we lost.
We're still on.
Our
We're
DP
still on.
is
Hey,
here.
Sam.
He's gonna fix it. Here we go, guys.
Oh,
Sam
everything's fine.
Salerno,
No one at home
our
panic.
director of
Everything will be
photography.
fine.
Everything's all right.
Like that?
Sideways,
Sam.
like that. People can't see.
Oh,
Yeah, it
that's
was like
something
that
with my phone, I
originally.
think.
We had to
Now
turn
they
it
see
sideways
us. We're
originally.
actually down.
We have to do it.
So what would you like to do?
How do we look? The only thing that matters is how do we look. Do we look
All right.
okay? Oh, look, people are giving us little hearts. Love that.
All right, do we have any questions from the...
Okay, here we go. Okay, we're
But
going.
where's Jason? We just lost him. Where are you, Jason?
We'll move over when
Jason,
Jason
tighten it,
talks.
tighten it.
I am like totally invading your space.
I don't
now.
care.
No, that's perfect.
Jason, you
Sounds
do that the
perfect.
best.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, we're still live. Do we have
This
any
one
questions
is out of
from our...
not
This
out
is out of love.
of aggression.
Let's bring our stylist in.
All right, in the back, you may see, in the back, in the back,
We're live, guys. Hey, we're good.
in the back, you may see two characters who you don't see on the show, but who make us look presentable every single day.
Joanne, raise your hand, Joanne.
Wait, I'm going to stand up.
Yeah.
Joanne is in from the West Coast to do this, and obviously Brooke is here as well, who works with me here in New York and every day and gets it all together. And
So if you're wondering why we look so good,
exactly.
Joanne. She sends boxes of clothes to our house.
How many are wearing the same coat?
We're all wearing the same coat. How hilarious
Yeah.
is that? Michelle and I have the same coat on. We didn't even know it.
The best part about Joanne is that she knows exactly what we're looking. We don't even have to tell her, and the clothes come and they just fit perfectly and they look great.
Well, my favorite
We're
part
so
is
grateful.
in the morning, all I have to do after my workout is just roll into the office with a t-shirt and jeans on and just appear.
Appear.
And suddenly they get me camera ready, which depending on the morning can be a lot of paint and spackle, depending on
I was telling Joanne. 'cause
environment.
But prior to Joanne, shopping is very stressful for me. Like I cannot go.
I don't
into
shop.
This,
No.
I just go in. I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do.
Wait,
Well, we're city hopping.
This has become the Joanne show.
Well, I mean,
And Brooke,
it's
and
the other
Brooke, they were
stuff,
together.
right?
Crime Watch Daily.
And we want to bring
Joanne.
Brooke in because her daughter just says hello on Facebook.
Ah, Brooke's daughter, very nice.
Hi,
Comes out to the set every once in a while.
Very cool.
It's a big family here at Crime Watch
Is
Daily.
this the first time we've all been together?
I think it's the first time we've been in the same room or car in the history of because we do this remotely. So I'm in New York or wherever on the weekends shooting, and these guys are all over the country.
I'm in LA. I'm based out of LA.
You have to remember, we have 5 moving pieces, 5 talent who have to do 15 stories a week, and the logistics of that are quite
It's intense.
astounding when you get right into it. But we get it done every week. We do 200 shows a year in 208 markets across the country, and every day we just get it done, and we do it for you guys. So if you have any questions for us, now's your time to chirp in. I know this is kind of last minute, and we weren't really going to do this today, but for the inclement weather and all being locked in this large Sprinter van, we've rented for the day. But we figured we might as well not waste the time, and before we pull the plug on the set, we thought we'd give you a little opportunity to check in with us.
Okay, Natasha's got some questions.
Natasha, hit it.
Okay. Tammy T asked, do you get scared to conduct an interview or to go knocking on doors? Now, that's a good question for each of you because you're all like very different.
Tammy T, the question is, do we ever get scared knocking on doors or going for spontaneous interviews? Yeah, it's always a little intense. We have security. We take the proper precautions. But if you're not on edge, you're not going to be sharp. So we're always on edge, Jason.
I don't know. It's sort of routine now at this point
Yeah.
for me. Like, I don't get.
Oh,
I
you
don't
tough guy,
No,
you.
no, no. I'm just saying. Listen, I gotta say,
You know what I'm saying.
I know. Oh, you always have to be alert,
Right.
For sure.
Right.
But I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York.
I grew up in Queens.
You
yeah.
grew up in
Queens. Detroit.
All right.
So
I
you're
grew
in
up in
Detroit.
Maryland.
I know what
you
it is
knock
to
on a
be
door in
afraid.
Detroit, you
I
knock
know
on
what
a
it
door
is.
like this in
Yeah,
case
okay.
lead comes out the other way.
No, I think it's for me. I look forward to the door knocks. I look forward to the unscheduled interviews.
What did you call it? A knock knock?
The knock
Knock,
knock.
knock.
Knock knocks.
Knock,
That's what
knock.
officially
knock
we're
knocks.
going to call it, the knock knock.
Well, it's basically when you can't find someone, right? You've been
Yep.
looking for them. You can't
Yep.
reach them. You need to hear their side of it, and that's what it is.
And
And you track
we
them down.
are, I mean, we are going inside someone's personal space. This is very personal. It is upsetting for them. There's often a camera on the other side of the door. There's often, us. We're asking them questions that they don't want to answer. But oftentimes, some of these people are holding keys to huge investigations.
Well, and also, we each got our different approaches here, and sometimes you just got to go hard with it and get the questions in, and sometimes,
naming names.
no, and I think that's great, but and Jason does this as well. Sometimes you got to work it a little bit. I mean, anybody can jump out of the bushes and get 10 seconds of dramatic video. What we do, and with many other franchises, along with Hanson versus Predator, is we try to get inside the guy's mind, because if you can understand how the criminal mind works and hear the voice of the victim, you can prevent somebody else from becoming a victim themselves.
Okay, we have another question. I'm going to have Jason move in a little because I can't see
Yes,
you, Jason.
Jason, we need you.
Yeah, so there you go.
Go on over on the apple box.
There you go.
How's that?
Because
Is that
I'm
better?
Jason.
Oh,
there we go.
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
All right. Awesome. Now we have another question.
Jason Correa Reyes asks, what's the most intense crime scene you have been on?
It's a good one.
Ooh, I
Well,
don't
I
like
think-
the blood. I
yeah.
don't like the blood.
9/11, Oklahoma City. I mean, obviously, they take.
Yeah.
When I was at Oklahoma City, I thought that'd be the worst thing that would ever happen in my career, and then 9/11 with 3,000 people.
Aurora, you were on the ground. I was on the ground
Aurora,
there.
exactly.
Newtown,
Yeah.
you were on the ground. I was on the ground.
Newtown.
there.
I'll tell you,
Yeah.
Newtown though, probably to me, it was right before Christmas.
It's terrible.
My sons were home from college. I was looking for an easy day, and somebody says, "Well, listen, you live in Connecticut. You want to go early and just go check it out?" I said, "Well, let me make a phone call." Called a source of mine in law enforcement, and I said, "Look, I need to know what to do here." I mean, my biggest problem of the day was getting to dinner with my sister and her husband from out of town. And he calls me back 5 minutes later and said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Yes." He said, 20 kids and 6 adults. I said, "What do you mean, Dad? Are you sure?" And I went downstairs, we mobilized the troops, but it was really something that I'll never
It's
forget
heart-wrenching.
in a horrible way.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Man, I think for the show, actually, the ride-along we did recently with the Montgomery
Yeah.
County Sheriff's Office
That was intense.
in Dayton, really intense, because we would go from, we went to a suicide scene
Right.
to an
And a
OD
whole night of it,
scene.
too.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because, obviously we've all seen it, done a lot of stories, but never before had I seen somebody follow a 911 call from beginning to end. And I had been in Montgomery County earlier in the year to do the heroin story, and you picked it up from the other side, but it was really compelling, I thought, to see from somebody making the call to the conclusion of the actual investigation.
Yeah, there was one time, actually, it was in Little Rock, Arkansas. This was, I think it was last season for Crime Watch Daily. And we get called to a scene, and the cops think some guy is shot in the head. He's just totally out, blood flowing from his head. And he wasn't shot in the head, thankfully. He was drunk and got into a fight with another drunk friend of his, and his friend hit him in the forehead with the railroad spike.
What?
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Oh.
And it was so deep that they thought it was a gunshot wound. Turns out the guy had very little injuries. He was just knocked unconscious and had to get stitched up, and he walked out of the hospital later that day.
Wow. You guys, I mean, you've seen a lot of.
You know, I think for me, this is just a personal one. I was once working in Atlantic City, and a helicopter crashed. 3 people died. They were actually Trump executives. And sadly, I knew all 3 of them, and I recognized one because when I saw his scalp, and I've never known anyone, and then you cover it as a news story, and then you see their body being pulled out of the wreckage. It was so devastating.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
those are the
anytime
images you can't get rid
anytime
of.
you have a personal connection, and the other thing that always just rips my heart out is, crimes against children. And we talked about this on the set the other day. It
Those
just,
are the absolute worst.
the story that we covered in Delphi, Indiana, the 2 girls, 13 and 14-year-old, were killed on a hiking trail. We felt so compelled to cover the story that we moved the whole show there essentially for that particular episode. And I think they're closing in on who did it. They executed the search warrants in the last 10 days. But I mean, anytime a child is involved, and these poor kids went out hiking. What's interesting is because I was there with a producer from the East Coast. Said, "Well, why would you let your kids hike out there?" I said, "Well, why would you let a 15-year-old drive a tractor? That's what people do in that part of the world, and that's why it's important for us to take the show out to these towns and smaller places where crime is uncommon. But people need to understand why and how it happens."
I think the worst is when the parents kill the children.
Oh,
I just
I
covered
can't,
one.
I've
no,
seen it
just
all, done it
shot
all
from
in
it.
34 years. But that's still just
I
tears
don't
me
know.
apart.
I mean, a woman in Montgomery County, Maryland,
Yeah.
murders her son, forces medicine down his throat,
God.
drives around with his body in the back, lights him on fire, douses his whole 5-year-old body in gasoline.
Well, Stephanie and I
lights
had
the car
a similar
on
one
fire.
in upstate New York. It was Munchausen's by proxy. It's a perfectly healthy young kid. His son is, she
Lacey
poisons
Spears?
him. Lacey Spears
Yeah.
poisons him with salt. Sorry. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a good one, guys. Amelia A. wants to know, how do you
Amelia.
guys not take your work home?
Well, that's a really good question. Somebody asked me once at a, news conference for one of the shows I do, have you ever had therapy for all the dark stories you cover? I said, well, I don't even want to go that deep. It's all sealed nice and tight down there where I keep it there. But it is.
But that's not healthy, Chris.
Well, that's
Right.
just
Do you
how
wanna
I
talk
deal with
about it?
No, I'm all set right now. I have it all contained. No, but it is true. I mean, Jason, you guys know, and all of you know, that, you do come home and open a beer and say, geez, what did I just see today?
Oh,
It's
and my
crazy.
poor wife, I have to unload on her. I'm like, you're not going to believe. Every time I do a story for the show, I'm like, it can't get any worse.
Right.
And
I
it
agree.
does.
I agree.
Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. But it does get to me in that these are real people you're talking to with
Yeah.
real horrible
We saw.
stories,
Yeah.
but yet you have to brush it off and move on to the next story. You just got to do it.
In my case, both of my sons are journalists, one in front of the camera and one behind the camera, and I'm talking to the younger one yesterday, and he said, wow, this guy, strangled his grandmother in northern Michigan, and this is our discussion,
Yeah.
because it's all in the family.
Yeah, at least.
But you do have to compartmentalize it and deal with the story and, kind of blow off some steam later.
But I find inspiration in some of the victims that we meet because the family victims sometimes are so strong
They are.
and so determined, right? And have some sense of hope because they want justice so badly that they sit down in front of us and they bare their souls to us.
And I think it's sometimes cathartic. I mean,
Yeah.
Pat Comunale, whose son was 28-year-old from Stamford, Connecticut, killed in that bizarre, crazy thing in the city. And I rarely lose it, but sitting down with him, having sons close to the same age from the same town, I mean, I got to one question and I just boom, it just all came
It all
out.
comes out.
And we end up hugging and crying and heaving.
It
But if you
happens.
can't have that emotion, you can't tell the story.
You
No.
can't.
I mean,
And the
try to
other
keep
thing
it,
is like
you
you're
know.
connecting with that person
Yeah.
so intently, and they are bringing up things that they maybe haven't talked about in a
Right.
long time, or maybe you're sharing with you for the first time. And it's not. I always say this: it's never a question and answer session.
No, it's
This
a conversation.
This is
Yes.
a conversation This is
Look, anybody
you
can
know.
read questions from a notepad. We don't do that. We have a conversation and we get inside the person's mind. That's what we all do. That's a stock training. Anybody else?
I've got more. Kathy Mart Smith asks, Chris, but we'll expand it. Do you feel the evil that comes off these predators you interview?
You know, it's interesting because we just shot a predator investigation. Yeah, I do feel the evil and this spirit of trying to co-opt somebody who is underage and not experienced and really trying to take advantage of them. And you see, particularly the grooming process that goes on, and it's almost a template of evil where they start with talking about school and they get to one thing and owner as parents, and then it starts into the sexual nature of the conversation. And it does, you can feel the pure evil of it. And I'm sure you guys do the same thing in all of your investigations.
I talk about energy, and I know that sounds really LA woo-woo, but everyone's got an energy about them. And don't you sometimes feel that, like, you're sitting there and they're scaring you because you're thinking, wow, they really might have done this because they're that evil.
Well, it's like the prison interviews that we've all done. Whether it's somebody involved in a homicide or a scam or anything else, they're going to try and explain their way out of it or why they did it, but
You can
deep
tell.
down in their soul.
But then, contra that, the people who may have been railroaded
Absolutely.
or erroneously convicted, you can genuinely tell a person has a kind spirit to them, almost,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
kind constitution
Rodney
to them.
Lincoln.
And that's a big part of what we do, exactly, Ronnie Lincoln. I mean, there are people, who have been wrongly convicted, and that's a part of what we do too. And anybody else?
Amelia J. Arredondo actually said, wow, thanks for answering. You guys just proved the emotional toll and strength it actually takes to do your job. Thanks.
Well, thank
I
you.
thought you guys
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
That's nice.
All right, guys. Well, listen. On behalf of Jason and Anna and Michelle and Brooke and Joanne in the back there.
Where is she? Where are they?
I don't know if we introduced Brooke properly. She's our New
Oh,
York
yeah.
stylist.
Right.
Brooke, will you stand up and take a bow? You said can't hide back
She's got
there,
the
Brooke.
very cool hat
Come
on.
on up, take a bow.
And of course, producer Stephanie and associate producer Natasha. Thank you for
You guys
everything
gonna
you do
jump
every day.
out here and say hi?
We're gonna, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
All
there she
right.
is.
Oh, that's Natasha.
All right, guys. Thanks very much.
Peace.
We'll be working hard for you, and we'll chat soon. Thanks for joining us.